Hello, Kenneth Castillo on the Discord. I am Kilpicona. Kilpicona is actually Finnish for turtle. I don't know why I picked that name. I like it, but there you go. If you leave with anything else but Kilpicona means turtle, hey, my job is done. I'm cool. Excellent. So I'm super glad to be here in front of you guys and be able to talk about detection engineering, specifically with Wazoo. It is pronounced Wazoo, especially when you're South American. That's really cool. I talked to people and they said Wazoo, and man, I can't argue with that. But yeah, I'm just super glad to be here talking for RGV Cyber. I love this community. I love being able to be a part of it. And yeah, Matthew and Jeremy, you guys are putting so much work. Miss Jeannie and you guys are putting in so much effort into making all of this work. So I just really appreciate that, and I hope that you guys can show that appreciation whenever you're able to, and just shake their hands or give them a high five or say they're awesome. So yeah, I'm glad to be here, and yeah, let's get started with detection engineering with Wazoo. So when I started making my slides, I asked Copilot, just playing with it, and I asked it make me an intro slide with my name on it, and it just put this massive lion, bold, strong lion next to my name, and I couldn't take it out, right? I don't want to make it feel bad, so it's just, that's not me. I just want to let you guys know I didn't put that lion there next to my name, glorious and all. It's just, that was it. So my name is Kenneth Castillo. I have been in IT for the past 8 years. I was a director of IT for the last 2 of those. And for the last 29 days, literally today is like 29 and a half, I have been a security analyst at Recon InfoSec. It has been like drinking from a fire hose. It is just tons of cool stuff, doing cool and interesting things. It's been a lot of fun over there with these guys. And yeah, it's been super fun to be over there. When I'm not working on cybersecurity and on computers, I do other stuff. I have other personal life. So I did Taekwondo from when I was 8 years old until I was 22. That was super fun. I love traveling. This is a picture of me going to Hobbiton in New Zealand. Hobbiton being from Lord of the Rings. This is probably one of the closest times I felt to being in a real life book. So if you haven't been to New Zealand, highly recommend it. Also, moas, look them up. They're terrifying. I also love food, and that's a picture of me in Japan eating a tasty treat out in the hot sun. Yeah, if you guys ever want to stop me and talk about any of these things or all of the things or just chat, I'm totally open to it. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. So today, I wanted to talk specifically with a foundation of what detection engineering is. So if I just look around the room really quick, you can raise your hand or give me a thumbs up. How many of us have done some level of detection engineering? Yes? No? Okay. How many of us have at least heard of it or have been interested in it? High five, thumbs up. Okay, cool, excellent. Yeah. So we've circled around it, but I think this talk is going to be aimed at a lot of the people that haven't really experienced detection engineering, because that is kind of where I am right now. 1 month as being a security analyst, this is the consolidation, crystallization of a lot of the information that I have been learning in real time. And you guys are right there with me. So I'm so excited. So we're going to talk about what the foundations of detection engineering is. We're going to talk a little about the process that actually goes behind writing detection rules and what that looks like. We'll do a really brief demo walkthrough of using Wazoo to do some engineering. And then we can have, if we have enough time, we'll do a little bit of a Q&A, okay? So very cool. So my first question, especially when I was coming up with this talk, is like, why detection engineering? Well, like, of all the really cool stuff in cybersecurity, you got the threat intel and threat hunting, and you got governance, super fun and awesome, yeah, compliance. Why detection engineering? Like, why this particular thing? And to ask that, I actually wanted to ask everyone a question. So, globally, and you please take out your phones, QR scan this so you can join the poll. It's not a scam. This is real. First rule of life. So, in 2024, how many days did it take for an organization to identify a breach in their environment? So we're looking at an average. How many days did it take? So was it 85 days, 5 days, 20 days, 65 days? So I'll just give us a couple of seconds here. Okay, we're thinking about 20, 65. Oh, wow, pretty even split. I'll give us another like 5 seconds here. Very cool. All right, so it looks like it's a pretty even split in the crowd in the organization. Oh, 40%. Someone changed their mind. To you, I say find your ground. No, I'm joking. So let's take a look at the answer. Actually, I'm so sorry. I lied to all of you. The average was 194 days to find a breach on average. Now, of course, some people, you know, there's the caveat to, did the organization want to own up to the breach, right? So that's also a factor. But detection engineering, do we know that there's a bad guy on the inside? And, you know, that is one of the answers that we can kind of come up with through detection engineering. Okay, so why? Why am I specifically talking about detection engineering? How is it important to me? So, well, number one, I'm a security analyst. The cases that I work on directly depend on those detections, on those alerts. So when I get a case in, I need to know, why is this being flagged? Why is this important? Why is this bad? Or why does the system at least think this is interesting? So me talking more about detection engineering helps me understand some of the work that I'm doing. Again, you guys are joining me in real time, how I process this information for my own work. So this is one of the reasons why I selected detection engineering. It also facilitates a deeper understanding of my environments and of my customers. So if I know that a specific customer or an organization has these specific detections, these things are important to them, right? So they're looking at this stuff for a reason, and I need to understand why. If it's a financial company or if it's like a gas line company, understanding those detections helps me understand what actually is important, right? And then finally, I get to practice what's normal. Being a security analyst means looking at logs, tons of data. And if I don't know what is important, I'm going to get overwhelmed, right? Especially if I don't have a lot of tuning going on. It's just going to be a waterfall of stuff. If I understand what is normal in a computer, that's going to help me spot if something is malicious, if something is suspicious, or at minimum, interesting, right? So detection engineering helps me practice all of these things and more. Okay, so let's understand a little bit more about detection engineering. So we know why we want to do it, but what is it, right? What goes into it? What are the components? I can't just say detection engineering and then run off like a bandit. No, we need to understand what that even means. So these are my own definitions that I've kind of understood. So detection engineering, as I've understood it, is processes that surface interesting or malicious behaviors for analysis. What does that mean? So not everything that goes on in a computer is immediately bad. That's a bad guy, and we need to take the computer and throw it out a window. Like, no, sometimes I just need information that is at least interesting so that I can be aware of that thing, right? So if somebody is made a global admin, that is interesting. Not necessarily malicious. Maybe they have a new hire or somebody got promoted, but that is interesting. And I should take a note of that, right? Especially once it starts getting connected to other interesting events, like somebody was raised to GA. And now they're doing a lot of scans. And now they're changing a lot of permissions. It's like, okay, that thing is no longer just interesting, that's now malicious, right? Or at least very suspicious, right? So detection engineering is a lot of those processes. It is part of the larger scheme of cybersecurity. So cybersecurity, it's so hard, especially when I was getting into cybersecurity. You can't just say, oh yeah, I'm transitioning to cybersecurity, that's good. There's so many, it's like the Appalachian Trail, right? There's so many peaks and troughs to this thing. It's not just a singular entity, and each of those peaks is different, right? You have the threat intelligence and the threat hunter part. You have the super fun, interesting GRC that everybody flocks to. You have the actual analyst and the triage portion to it, right? So there's all of these different peaks, areas, and surfaces that all contribute to the whole cybersecurity part, right? It's one big entity and it all flows together, right? This trail of detection engineering that I'm on can easily fork over into the threat intel or threat hunting, right? It's all meshed together. So by kind of sitting and going to the top of this and taking a look around, this can help me help you guys understand kind of how everything else is correlated to each other, right? If I get really strong in this portion, or at least solid in my understanding, then I can at least start moving on to the next parts and get a better understanding of those things that I don't know, right? And then finally, detection engineering, just a really strong, this is just something that I've heard learning more about it. You really want to have the mentality that this is already post-infiltration, right? So you walk in, you take your coffee and you drink it and you say, the bad guys have already broken in. Wow, excellent. Let's get started. Let's get to work. Maybe not so fun to actually have it happen, right? But having that mentality can help you get into the frame of mind that you need to start creating these rules. Cool. So building up detection engineering. So like I said, it's not just a single entity. There's tons of stuff that are all around it and they all build upon each other, right? If you're on one little hill, that little hill contributes to the whole mountain range of detection engineering and then into the entire thing of cybersecurity. So building up detection engineering, this is something that I've understood kind of all connects to it. So there's 4 really large pieces that kind of make sense to me that kind of go in detection engineering. So one of the major pieces is telemetry and platforms. Do you have information from the systems coming into your SIEM? Because if you don't, well, guess what? You can't see anything. You can't do anything. So you need some level of information coming into your system. So that telemetry of those platforms, if that's Google Chronicle, if it's Wazoo, if it's something Sysmon at minimum, right? You're having something make those logs and then send them over. So that's one part that helps build up detection engineering. You also need information on your organization. I had a conversation once, and it went along the line. One of the things that came out of it was, man, sometimes it seems like the bad guys have like way more knowledge about our environment than we do, right? Like the bad guys know which people have just the right amount of the wrong permissions, or like these particular folders or just have a little bit too much access, right? So we need to also have a deeper understanding of our organizations and our customers that we are servicing, right? If we don't understand what's important to those people, right, in the customer organization, it's going to be harder for us to protect those things and set up those detections to take care of those things. Another component is threat intelligence. We do need threat intelligence. We need to keep abreast of all the stuff that's going on. We just recently had one of the largest breaches in supply chain, right? The NPM stuff, right? Thank you. Yeah, massive. And if your customers use that stuff, that should ring some sort of alarm bell in your head, and maybe you should take a look at that. But if you're not keeping up with threat intelligence, well, that stuff may actually go under the radar for you. So keeping up with threat intelligence is incredibly important. Highly recommend that. And then finally, we have the community, because man, oh man, if you're a one-person army, it's hard. Can I hear you say it's hard? It's hard. You never talk when you're by yourself. I've been there, director of IT for a nonprofit. It was hard, right? And having a community that you can connect with, that you can share information with, and you can rely on for those rules and detections, because guess what? For pretty much anything that you're working on, there's somebody else also working on that. And that's awesome. That's good to know, right? Because it stinks to kind of just walk up a trail by yourself. It's good to know other people have been on that trail. So yeah, so these are the different components, 4 different components that I think really contribute to having a strong detection engineering ecosystem and process, right? If you have these things going for you, I think you're probably going to do very well. Okay, so I've talked quite a lot about the who's and the whys and the what. Let's actually just do it, right? Let's actually talk about how to do the thing. So, well, not actually do it. We'll get to that. We're almost there. Everyone, calm down. We're gonna get to talking about the process and talk about that, because it's actually very important to understand the process of how to do these things. And I think in our demo it'll highlight why it's important to do this process. So. Just so you know, in our demonstration later today, we are actually going to be doing just a simple rule. So we're not going to be going crazy and doing some massive level detection engineering. It's going to be very straightforward and simple. But even then, this process is very pertinent, right? So 3 major portions to the process, and you can get detailed as you like. But the 3 major portions is just your researching and then your querying to get that detection, the actual testing of your rule and tuning that rule, and then you have your documentation and your deployment. So we'll start with the first part of researching and querying. So you need a detection doesn't just spring out of the ground, right? It doesn't just, haha, I have a lightning bolt and I'm going to write this thing. You need some idea. You need some goal. What do you want to do with this, with whatever it is that you're doing with this particular detection? You need to know what you actually want to accomplish. So this idea can come from any number of places. This idea can come from threat intel. In my earlier example, NPM got hit. Your customers use NPM. Well, there's your idea. I should have some level of protection in case there's something going on with that. There is, we just worked on tampered chef, right? There's a particular piece of threat intel that came in, and tampered chef .pdf was one of those things. And yeah, we had this idea and we looked in our system and we made a rule for that. So we need something to kind of coalesce all this information. And it can even be just a customer request. Sometimes the customer is like, hey, I want to have some level of visibility on this thing, and that also suffices. So we need some level of idea when we're doing all of our research for all of this, and we also need to have an understanding of what our fidelity for that alert is. Now, fidelity is basically an understanding of how probable is this going to capture an actual true positive. So is it a high fidelity? It's for sure going to catch a true positive. Like, this is a bad guy doing bad things. He stole all the lollipops and, we caught him. Yes, excellent. Or is it a very low fidelity and actually it's catching a bunch of kids coming out of the candy store and none of them are bad. They're just doing kid things. Like, okay, well, high fidelity, you're for sure going to catch what you're looking to catch, but you have the issue of being too narrow and you might actually miss variations of that particular thing. So now you didn't even catch what you were looking for, because the bad guy, instead of being bad guy.exe and you're looking specifically that, well, the bad guy instead used badbro.exe and my alert didn't trigger because I was looking for bad guy.exe, right? Too narrow. It's not looking for enough variation. But if I'm too broad, well, you're going to drown in the noise, and you're analysts like me. Well, there's just too much stuff, and I'm going to start tuning it out myself. I'm not going to be paying attention to that anymore. So there is a golden road, right? A fine line between too broad and too narrow, and you kind of have to work out that stuff as you develop the rule. So that's the researching, the querying, and then we move on to testing and tuning. So when we actually test the rule, we need to make sure that we're using it against data that we have. So if I have a rule, it's looking for a bad guy.exe, but I only have 5 days of logs. Well, that's not actually very indicative, right? That may not be very helpful to me. Now, if I had 30 days of logs from all my endpoints and my customers, and I look for bad guy.exe, well, that's better, right? And if I had 90 days of logs, that's even better, right? So now I have a better understanding of how is this detection going to do against my environment? Is this actually going to catch what I'm looking for? And on top of that, if I have even a test bed computer representative of my environment, that can also help me with my detection rules. So if I have a blank Windows 11 computer and I run my rule against it and it finds nothing, cool, that's awesome, excellent. But let's say my customer uses Outlook, right? Or they use some financial software and it has a bunch of like all these open ports and is doing all this stuff. And because I didn't test across a computer that's actually representative of my customer, I don't actually have a good idea of whether or not this rule is going to work for me or not, right? So sometimes having something representative of your environment can also help you if you have that ability. So we did the researching, we started testing it, we tuned it, we're feeling good about it. Now we do the fun part, the documentation and the deployment. So documenting, always helpful. Number one, it helps you make sure you don't forget about the thing, especially with detection engineering. I'm sorry, I've been busy, you guys are busy, we're all busy, but with detection engineering, you can't set it and forget it and then walk away from it forever. Actually, you need to continually go back and see how it's doing. Is it still doing what it needs to do? Maybe on day one, you deploy it and it catches 10 hits. Awesome, that's good. 10 hits is really good fidelity. And then a month later, you go back and you run it and it catches 2,000. That's bad fidelity. What happened? We don't know. Well, if you do that, you can at least go back and you can tune it and you can continue understanding what needs to happen. But if you're not going back and checking and tuning, well, that alert that you put all that time and effort into is going to waste away and not really be that helpful to you anymore. So documenting, very helpful. Testing continuously. And then finally, we can consider using canaries and scripts to kind of further test our detections. How are we familiar with like canaries in the coal mine analogies? Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. Thumbs up. Canaries in the coal mine, right? Just in case we're not certain, canaries in the coal mine were used by coal miners to detect carbon monoxide. It was a way to test if something bad was happening. So we can use our own levels of quote unquote canaries to see if something bad is happening, especially if we're maybe not aware of it. Another term for canaries can also be like honeypot, if we're familiar with that. It's the same stuff. So there's all sorts of levels of canary tokens, honey tokens. So you can use like Word documents. You can use honey tokens to create a Word document. And if somebody double clicks that thing, boom, I get a notification on my cell phone, on my email, on my Discord, and my, I don't know, all sorts of my Instagram, maybe not that. But, you know, I get the notification, hey, maybe somebody that's not supposed to be accessing this stuff did. And I need to know and I need to respond to that, right? It doesn't just necessarily need to be a document. It can also be an account, which is actually what we're going to be doing today. We have a honey account, a honey user, if you will, that we're going to be deploying to utilize in our detection engineering. So that's what we're going to be going through. Before we get into the actual demo, I know everyone calm down, relax. I promise we're going to get to the demo. It's going to be okay. But I want us to talk a little bit about Wazoo. I promise it's pronounced Wazoo. That way we just understand what is the system I'm even talking about. That way you guys have some context of what am I talking about when I put this rule in a thing and it does a thing, like what does that even mean? So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Wazoo components. So Wazoo, it starts with the agent on the endpoint. So there's a piece of software, the Wazoo agent, that's over on the endpoint, and it's going to take all the logs that it needs and basically ship them over, or it's going to make them ready to get shipped over to the rest of the Wazoo system. So we have the Wazoo agent. There's a file shipper called file beat that takes all the logs and it ships it over to Wazoo. Wazoo Manager is the actual brain, the heart. It has the rules and the detections, and it's got all the mechanics that actually makes it do what it needs to do. Wazoo Indexer is kind of the back end. It's where all the logs live. And as you query and you look up, hey, was there bad guy.exe in my environment? It's going to look in the indexer and get all that stuff and then surface it to you. And then it's all visualized in Wazoo dashboard. So those are basically like the 5 major components. There's tons and tons of other stuff that goes into Wazoo. But if you guys are interested in playing with the SIEM, Wazoo works really, really well out of the box. It takes up 15 minutes to deploy in a VM to just get the thing going and make it work. And you can just start play testing it and seeing how it operates. And then up here on my slide, I have what the actual dashboard looks like. I promise this isn't a real environment. This is a fake environment. Otherwise, 47 critical alerts and 7,000. So that's not real. Nobody is panicking about that. Everybody, it's okay. We're all right. I promise. Okay, fine. I have talked at length a lot about doing the darn thing, and we finally get to do the darn thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate doing unauthorized access on a canary user, or a honey user, if you will, using Wazoo as the basis of our platform. So we have a canary user. A canary user, again, just to be overly rambunctious about it, right? It's a fake user. Nobody's actually logging in. There's nobody at 8 a.m. drinking their coffee and say, I got to log into my honey user today. It's a fake person. There's no one supposed to log into that. And that's good. If anybody ever logs into this user, that's bad. I need to know about that, right? If anybody ever, does anything using this account, I need to know about that and then wake up in the middle of the night and do something about it, right? So to bring it back to the original process we talked about, remember, it's all part of the same thing. Even with simple rules, simple detections, we need to remember the original process to making a detection. So we go back to our original, I know, I come back, I hooked you and we go back. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. So we start with an idea, right? What is our idea and what are we going to do about it? And then in our process, we're going to configure our rules. So we started with our idea, which is using that honey user. We're going to configure the rule. We're going to test the rule by logging into Windows, and then we're going to see it visualized in Wazoo, right? So it's kind of outlined up here on my slide. That's what we're going to be looking at today. Are you excited? Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, all right. Everyone calm down. It's all right. Everyone, you can relax, I promise. Okay, so number one, we need an idea. Now, let's say I had 0% idea, right? I had no idea of where I wanted to start. Kenneth, I'm not going to think of a honey user. What else can I use to get started, to get an idea? One random user, let me tell you what you can do. You can use the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So here are tons and tons of techniques and tactics that bad guys use to basically do bad guy things. And in here is actually what we are doing today in our demonstration. So if you're not using threat intelligence to come up with your idea, if it's a bad PDF or NPM, instead you can use the MITRE ATT&CK framework and you can create a detection for one of these things. Let's say you're starting from scratch. I have a customer and they have nothing, 0 detections. Well, you can come to MITRE ATT&CK and you can say, well, I need a detection for privilege escalation and valid accounts and for lateral I keep saying transmission, but lateral movement, right? So you can basically start picking and choosing different detections through this MITRE ATT&CK or different techniques in this MITRE ATT&CK and create those detections for them until you have your own map of rules and stuff that you're looking to catch in your environment. So if you're lost, you have 0%, you can start with at least this. Today we're going to be working on T1087, which is the valid account. So valid accounts in MITRE is there's some account, sometimes it's forgotten, sometimes it's overly provisioned, right? There's excess permissions given to that account, but the bad guy is going to use some account that already exists in the environment, right? So in our case, our valid account is the honey user, and we're going to create a detection for that. Cool. So that was step one. We know what we want to do. Now we can go create the rule. We'll trip it by logging into our Windows computer, into that user account, and then we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so this is the actual rule that I am putting into Wazoo. This is it. You guys did it. You made it. This is the most exciting thing that you've been looking forward to this entire talk. I know, you're welcome. So this is the rule that we're putting into Wazoo. This is what it's going to look to do to trip, right, to detect in our environment. So just lay out some of the core parts of this rule. Now, I really want to highlight, this is very, very platform specific, this particular rule, right? If I learn how to create rules for Wazoo, that may not immediately translate to making a rule for like Elastic or for some other platform, right? So this is now very niche, not niche, but at least specific to Wazoo. And yeah, I also would just really want to highlight, for all of this stuff that I've been talking about detection engineering, you don't need a SIEM to do detection engineering. All of this is in the context of Wazoo and the SIEM. You don't need a SIEM. If you have just some creativity, so long as you have some sort of notification that something you want to know about happened, that's detection engineering, right? If I create an email rule, right, and it lets me know like, hey, somebody over here was emailed, and then you get a notification, hey, somebody wasn't supposed to be emailed and they were, that's detection engineering. So you're still doing it. You don't necessarily need this thing with this gadget, with this software, right? You need creativity and you need a goal, right? And that's one particular part I want to highlight. So specifically to Wazoo, just talk really quickly about this. So Wazoo doesn't like to just create a rule and then just sit it out, you know, on the table and then you forget about it. No, you need to organize it. You need to keep it clean, keep your house clean, right? So you take your rule, you got to go, you put it in the cupboard next to the sugar, and it's good. So with Wazoo, it likes to have things in categories. It likes to have things in groups. And in this case, I'm grouping this particular rule with the Windows group, which already existed. So that is already created and deployed with Wazoo. And in the Canary group, which I made. That's a thing that I made. If I ever make other Canary or Honey token stuff, I can stick those in that particular group. So there's the group that I have to attach it to. There's the rule ID and the priority level. So rule ID is mostly arbitrary. Wazoo just recommends to keep it between 100,000 and 200,000 for your custom rules. And then you have the priority level, right? How bad is this thing? In Wazoo, it goes from 0 to 16. So 0 being like purely informational, not even really an alert of any sort. It's just some sort of detection that something happened. To 16, like, hey, you need to get out the fire extinguisher because this is bad. So I'm going to put this at 13 because we know for this rule, this is legitimately a bad thing. Nobody should be logging into this user, and I need to know about it. So that's going to be the rule and the level, the ID and the level. And then we have the if SID or if group. That goes back to Wazoo needing things to be categorized, needing things to be grouped appropriately. So if SID 60,106, that is associated with another rule in Wazoo, and that particular rule says successful logon. So anytime I sit down and I say, hey, I'm Kenneth Castillo, and I sign in, boom, there's a 60,106, and it's right there. So that's always happening. I'm going to attach my rule to that particular event, right, to that particular detection. And then for this other stuff, I just have the field name. The field name is what I'm specifically looking for. So I'm looking for a target username of test. So test is my honey user, right? And then I have a description. My description is what's going to be visible to me once it triggers. And then I'm going to have some additional things that I kind of want to connect it to. And I can also even put in other stuff, optional fields like MITRE tactics. So at this point, I could have easily tagged T1087, and then Wazoo will actually surface those things to me. Hey, here's all the 10 T87s, not just this particular detection, but any other rules that may be firing, and I can have visibility on those things as well. So that's creating the rule. That's what it looks like. Okay, this is it. We've created the rule. It's there. We restarted Wazoo Manager. Now we actually need to trip it and see what happens. So I do just that. I log in to my test user. Again, this is a honey user. That shouldn't be happening. And I go back to my Wazoo platform, and I can see, bingo bango, there's 100,010. That is the rule that we created. There is a successful logon to Canary user. It's rule level 13. The fire trucks come out, and I start throwing, I don't know, confetti at people. I don't know. But whatever it is that you guys do when you have a panic attack, right? So we've done it. This is it. Congratulations. You guys are all done. You can go home. You're set for life. You've done everything that you need to do. There's nothing more beyond this, right? Or is there? I actually have a quick question. Can anybody tell me if there was something wrong with my rule that I did? Yeah, let me tell you. This is my rule. This is the rule that I did. That rule is correct. This triggered, and I was able to detect that. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea. If in this particular case, I only have one honey user, so that is correct, actually, in this case. No, that was good. That was perfect. Thank you. So actually, what I did was I logged out again, and I connected to this computer, my test user, using remote desktop, RDP, as test user, right? So I RDP'd to this, and guess what? My rule did not trigger. So I have the 100,010. It's probably really hard for you guys to see that. I apologize. So 100,010 is at the very bottom. I have a bunch of other logs. So Wazoo has rules to see that remote desktop happen, but they're like level 3, level 6 notifications, right? I'm not going to wake up in the middle of the night. So here's an example, actually, that my fidelity is too narrow. It is too narrow. I didn't catch another login possible avenue, right? I only caught somebody sat down on the computer and they logged in as test, and that's all I caught. So that kind of comes back to the original process that I was talking to you, that process of researching and having that idea. You really need to have an understanding. What are you trying to accomplish? Is it just a person sits down and logs in, or is it any level of successful logon to this user? It goes back to having a good idea and then testing it, right? If I didn't think, hey, Kenneth, what if somebody tries to use RDP or like some other level of authentication, you know, like over SMB or something like that? I wouldn't have thought to consider that in my rule detection. And now we have gaps in our detection engineering at this point, right? So it all comes back to having a process, right? And being solid in that process to be able to go through that. Cool. So if you guys are still stuck, that's totally fine. If the MITRE attack is just too overwhelming or too boring for you guys, I know everyone's sick of the MITRE attack. It's okay. There's other places that you can look for information. So Stock Fortress, they have repos of Wazoo rules. So you have plenty of access there. There's also a website called detectionengineering.net. Detectionengineering.net is super cool. They have tons of information and articles and blog posts about detection engineering. So yeah, that is it. Thank you guys for listening. And yeah, I am. Do we have a whole lot of time, or we have some time? Yeah. Okay. Well, are there? This is now an open discussion. So if you guys have questions that you want to bounce around or talk about or think about or anything interesting, is there anything that you guys were curious about? Yeah. Yeah.
You know they're going to go after that.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Yeah. So I have a bad guy and he's enumerating all of these different user accounts, and he doesn't go for my honeypot. He goes for Matthew Navarro instead. And he logs in because Matthew put his password as password123. So terrible. It's true. It's completely valid. Another thing that you can also do is set up detections surrounding that honey user, right? So did somebody enumerate? Is somebody doing Nmap? And scanning for that stuff. So it's all part also of having a broad range of detections, right? Am I just looking for this one thing, or am I looking for all sorts of levels of techniques and tactics that go into it? So in this particular case, you are right. It is very dependent that somebody actually logs into the test user, but that's also kind of the thing about having a test user, right? Like if my test user has a password of test, that's probably going to be more appealing to a bad guy. Remember, a bad guy, they're going to go through the path of least resistance, right? Am I going to go straight for the hardest crackable, thing, or am I going to find this particular user, maybe that I can try to pivot into and get into some other service, right? So yeah, great question. Anything else? Questions, comments, shouts, or protests? Yeah.
You don't need like a scheme or it sounded like that. Is that what the category of software that Wazoo offers?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So SIEM, SIEM, and I keep forgetting what the actual acronym stands for, but it's basically log aggregation, right? So SIEM is just a bunch of logs are being put together, and you're able to query and search among them really, really fast. And usually there's some sort of visualization across it too. So I can search for chrome.exe across my users because those logs are all there, and I can search for that and create detections around them. Yeah, great question. SIEM, SIEM. There's tons of other platforms that also fall into that. Yeah. Anything else? Questions, comments, shouts of protest? There wasn't enough detection ruling. Yeah. What are so in general, I would say your creativity, right? So it depends a lot on what are you trying to accomplish and what's the best way to do that. A lot of it is also your platform. So if you don't have anything, if you have just your email, it's going to be really hard to create a rule around that. But your creativity, I think, in doing what you're trying to do becomes a big component into it. Now, like I said, there's tons of information and resources. So if you really don't know where to start, there's all sorts of avenues you can look up. One thing I didn't get into with this stuff is Sigma rules. Have we heard of Sigma rules? Yes, no, maybe so. Sigma rules, it's actually, it's platform agnostic detection rules. So that rule I was telling you, I've made very much sure to emphasize, like, that is a Wazoo rule. Like, I can't take that and scoop it up and put it into another system. It doesn't work. There needs to be some level of translation. So Sigma rules are built to be system agnostic. They don't belong to Wazoo or Lima Charlie or Google Chronicle or anything like that, or Graylog. So that is another place that you guys can look into for inspiration in trying to do what you're looking to do as well. So the only caveat I would say, especially in this particular case, is Sigma rules do not directly integrate into Wazoo. So that is a limitation, I would say, of Wazoo. There's not a direct, one-to-one, I can put a Sigma rule in and convert it over, unfortunately. So that's a Wazoo limitation more than that. Yeah. Anything else? Cool. Well, thank you guys. My name was Kenneth Castillo. And if you have any other questions, if you want to talk to me about food or heavy metal, I'm completely down for it. Thank you guys. And yeah. Oh, yes. Wow.
I think the best way to learn is without somebody. Do you know if there's like any internet test program that where somebody could just like shout at somebody and like learn firsthand or answer like that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't have specific internships That is a little difficult sometimes because, especially with cybersecurity, you're dealing with sensitive information. So if your customer is like with the county, or they're with law enforcement, or they're doing something, that can be hard to get other people and just let you shoulder surf and watch that stuff, right? Because that becomes a legal liability at that point. Now, what I do recommend and what did help me, so if you guys are interested in getting into cybersecurity, getting into a security analyst position, number one, being part of this community is a massive, massive step forward. So number one, to you guys, I mean, just congratulations for being part of this. Like, if you're looking to get better, this is one way to do it. And if you guys are not interested in getting better, but you're just here to collaborate, I also thank you, because we need people like you to help and to talk. Like, that's awesome. So to go back to your original question, things that helped me were anti-siphon training that was recommended to me. It's a big help. They talk about a lot of really cool stuff, and a lot of their stuff is even free sometimes. So Pay What You Will is a platform or a program that they have where you can just sign up. You'll have like 4-hour trainings over like 4 hours for over 3 days, right? So like 12 hours of training for free, right? So that's an awesome resource. I also just really recommend testing this stuff. Like Wazoo, I mentioned that it's free and open source. I really recommend using it to test this stuff out yourself. Look for proof of concepts online, Wazoo proof of concept, try them out yourself. And that's good experience because it's, number one, written for you and you can just follow along, but you're building those muscles to get better at doing those skills as well. Yeah, great question. Anything else? Yeah.
There's also like alternative ways to go about it. What if someone doesn't have a scheme? I guess you mentioned that, but I'm not sure what those ways would be.
It would be how creative you are. Yeah, so it's you have Wazoo, absolutely. Wazoo is absolutely free, yeah. And there are, of course, like Wazoo isn't the end all be all either. You can get into Elastic for, I think, a month for free. So Elastic is another resource that you can get into if you really want to dig into that. So so that stuff is free. In terms of like, how do I get information and telemetry if I don't have a SIEM? Your creativity is like the number one thing. I've been in the position where I was using batch scripts to email me everything that I needed because I didn't know stuff like this existed, right? So a batch script that is pinging a computer 17 times a day, and that one time it doesn't respond back. Oh, I need to respond to that. So yeah. Anything else? Again, thank you guys for letting me be here and talk all your guys' ears off. And if you guys ever want to stop, chat, hang out, completely down for it. My name was Kenneth Castillo. If you see me online, it's Kilpicona. Kilpicona means turtle. If you walk away with anything else that Kilpicona means turtle, that my job is a win. Excellent. Thank you guys so much. And yeah.